Hello, Laziali all over the world. Welcome to Lazio Lounge special episode because yesterday in Rome there has been playing this little game, Lazio Roma. Not at all important for the city of Rome. Not a great game, to be honest with you. I don't know, Alistair. I wasn't expecting that much, to be honest. I was I could envision that this could be a not so exciting game, knowing especially how Mourinho plays. Overall, is it a good result? 0-0 in the derby, 1 point each. Um, are you satisfied?
Judging by the tone of your voice, I'm picking up that you don't think it's a good result. I
Well,
mean,
yeah, I mean this Roma team doesn't scares me a lot, right? They don't play a great football, to be honest, and they show it even yesterday. So, but to be honest, in the second half, Lazio didn't create that much, right?
yeah, I mean, I think you can see it both ways because I think it was the right result. I don't think either team particularly deserved to win that game. Um, it was, like you mentioned, quite predictable. Not just because of the way that Roma play and how dependent they are on a moment of individual magic to really produce anything, but also the way the Lazio play and how pathetically blunt they've been in attack for a long time now. So I did write a preview of this game and said it's not suggesting there's going to be a lot of goals here, and always hoping to be proven wrong, but it's not a big surprise that it was 0-0. I do think, though, that it's the kind of game that we might look back on by the end of the season and think that's another missed opportunity, really, because Lazio feel like they have problems they still need to sort, and they've got potential that they're not managing to realize yet. Whereas Roma, I think that is just what they've got, really. I don't think they're really developing much more than that. Mourinho doesn't want them to. No, seriously, like that is the way they play. And Mourinho will complain a lot about injuries, and he's got some very justifiable complaints.
But
But he's never tried to do anything else with that team, is what I mean.
Alistair, I think yesterday Oli Smalling was missing. They had every single player, and they still played rubbish. And playing counter attack for 95 minutes, I thought it was in a derby. I thought it was embarrassing, and the fact that in the Italian press no one is complaining about this type of football, it's incredible.
I disagree. It was counter-attack for 95 minutes. And to be honest, there were periods of that game where Roma are on top, periods where they're having a lot more possession than Lazio. And I was finding those periods frustrating because I felt like that this Lazio team should technically have the upper hand and be able to control the game better than they were in those stages. Now, by the end of the game, both teams had decent chances. Lazio's chances were slightly the better, you'd say, with Alberto hitting the post and Romagnoli's header that was saved, but it's just not enough. It's still not enough. And Roma are a team that are solid defensively, but we've scored since that Sassuolo game, we've scored 3 goals and 2 of them have been penalties in the last 5.
You're taking out my stats, huh? Okay.
Well, I've got more than that today. Once we get onto the attack properly. But it's just not good enough. But on the flip side, the defense is back, isn't it? I mean, it's not quite the defense of last season, but there is a hell of a lot more solidity there. The team seems to be a lot more coherent defensively in terms of defending as a unit, and there have been quite a few clean sheets now. So that is a real positive that we should take.
Before diving deep into the game, I thought, and we didn't do a podcast on after the game, but the Lazio Feyenoord game had a huge impact. I thought our team was really tired in the second half, and you can see it. And Roma didn't take advantage of that, and I thought that was a huge mistake from Mourinho. He should have brought in El Shaarawy and so on, and try to win this game. We lost in the second half Marusic, Felipe Anderson, and Vecino. We already didn't have Zaccagni. This is all due to Tuesday, that, let's not forget, was a final for us, right? We needed to win against Feyenoord to keep our chance, our hope alive for the Champions League. This had a huge impact in this game of yesterday, I thought. And we could see it in the second half. Did you have the same impression, Alistair, that we were tired? We played, just to give a context, if people didn't notice, of only 3 players that started yesterday didn't started Tuesday. Cataldi, Guendouzi, and Pedro. All the others 8 were starting even on Tuesday. I thought this had a huge impact.
Yeah, there was a lot of chat about this, obviously, in the build-up to the game. I was in the press conference after the Feyenoord match, and as soon as Sarri made that comment about the friendly match for Roma, I was like, "Oh God, this is gonna kick off some big kind of war of words." And so it did. But to be honest, it did get taken a little bit out of context, because the point he was making more was that Roma had the opportunity to rest and rotate for that game, given where they are in the group, given the opposition they had, compared to Lazio, who were in this position where they had, like you say, had to win really to keep that Champions League ambition alive. And it was a tough game as well. He described it as going to war. It did feel a bit like that, especially in the second half, where, I mean, they were really up against it a lot of that second half. I think Feyenoord's showed in that game again that they do have kind of technical superiority to Lazio, but those are the benefits of learning how to defend well as a team and really fight for each other. And this team has been criticized time and again over the years for its approach to matches, sometimes its mentality in games, not looking like it cares enough. But that was not the case on Tuesday. I think that they really fought for each other on Tuesday, and we were complaining about the crowd in advance. It was a shame that they didn't get a bigger crowd for that game, but they seemed to really like be fighting for each other and for the fans who were there, and that's what got them there. So that again, like you need all these things to come together at once to feel like you're really getting somewhere. But I do think the building blocks of a strong defense and a team that's fighting for each other and leaving everything out there with the right mentality, which I think we've seen in both of the last 2 games, that's a huge positive, especially after that Bologna game where those things didn't really feel like they were there so much.
Yeah. Talking about the Feyenoord game, it wasn't easy. They played really good football, and it was funny because you can see 2 different teams, right? Feyenoord trying to impose their football, try to score. Roma, completely the opposite, defending, and trying to find the right chance with a little bit of luck and long balls. So it was difficult for Lazio to adapt to 2 different games. We won probably the most important game, right, Alistair? If we had to choose which game to win, it was the Feyenoord one.
Yeah, I mean that was a pivot game, wasn't it? I mean, if you lose that, things are going in the wrong direction. We're now in a position where it's in our own hands to qualify, which is an amazing position to be in, even in a position where could be qualified with 1 game to spare if things go well. If we beat Celtic and Atletico beat Feyenoord, but let's not start thinking about that too much yet. I mean, I think there were a few real positives from that game, but the main one for me is Ciro Immobile's performance, because Sarri's been telling us time and again how he's been kind of he's not basically been able to play at 100% this season so far, and he's been training in a specific kind of way to try and get back to fitness. But I think what we saw in that game was not only him looking a bit sharper physically, but the team playing to his strengths a bit more. And I guess the benefit of being on the back foot a little bit was that Feyenoord were pushing their defensive line higher. That was opening up a lot more space in behind. And this time, unlike other games we've seen this season, Lazio were more willing to hit those balls in behind, to go long, to go direct when they need to. And that's what Ciro feasts off. And that's how we got the goal ultimately. So I don't think that's the way we need to play all the time, but it was nice to see the team mixing it up a bit.
I love Ciro, and he's a great player. We tried that solution a couple of times yesterday, and it didn't work out. Roma defender were stronger. Probably he didn't have that much space to run, but he struggled to win the 1-against-1 against Roma defenders. So, but it's even true that he played a hard match on Tuesday, and probably in the second half in particular, didn't have the energy to keep going. The problem, as we mentioned, we lost 3 players in the second half, and even though Castellanos was warming up, you have to make the decision. Or we play 10 men with Castellano, or we play 11 and Ciro finish the game.
Yeah. It was a bit surprising to see Kamada coming on the left wing. What did you think of that?
Did you want Sana Fernandez?
For the first time this season in a derby, just trying something completely new.
Well, we didn't have options because Zaccagni wasn't on the bench. You had Sana Fernandez, the youngster for Primavera. Are you putting him in the last, 20 minutes of the derby? Don't think so.
Yeah, well, fair enough.
I was thinking, Alistair, honestly, that we were switching to a 4-4-2 when Kamada came in. Instead, we keep playing with a 4-3-3. Which
always 4-3-3. never change. Yeah, I mean, well, what would you pick out as the strong or not so strong performances then? I mean, for me, I was impressed by Guendouzi. I think that was one of his better games, particularly from the start. Bit more combative in midfield, but showing a bit more in attack, playing some good passes. Yeah, I thought he was very busy, played very well, considering how many of these players, it was their first experience of a Rome derby that was, I mean, you were there, I wasn't, sadly, but the atmosphere seemed amazing. And it did seem like something from some of the pictures I've seen that was surprising some of the new players a bit, quite how ferocious it is.
Yeah. I did a video for my Italian channel about Guendouzi. I thought this was his match. He likes those type of fight games, right? Where it's not only skill, but it's physical. It's a little bit of fight in midfield. And I thought that was the perfect example of what we can expect from him. He stepped up to the challenge. I thought he had a great performance and helped Luis Alberto that was really struggling in the second half to keep up with the match. So I thought Guendouzi was maybe with Patrick, man of the match yesterday. Talking about midfield, I was surprised to see Cataldi start.
Yeah. What did you think?
I thought that Sarri wanted to give him a chance considering the derby and that it would have been a fight. I thought Cataldi played well overall. It was funny though, because just 1 week ago, Sarri said, well, Cataldi is not playing simply because he's not training well enough. So I guess this week the performance in the training have improved. And maybe he thought he feels the derby, he can give us something more in this type of games. I thought he played well, honestly. But yeah, it was surprising to see him start. I thought he wasn't even in the conversation to start on Sunday.
Well, it is like the spin of a roulette wheel, this midfield, from game to game. Other than Luis Alberto, who we know, regardless, I mean, if Luis Alberto was in a wheelchair, he would still wheel himself out to start every single match. But other than that, it's so hard to really tell what the balance is going to look like. And to really, I guess, as a result of that, to really kind of come to a decision as a fan of like what is the best midfield, because it becomes quite confusing after a certain point to try and kind of remember and piece together what works in what types of games and what doesn't and so on. I do think you're right. Perhaps Cataldi was put in because he knows unlike some of the other players, he knows what this derby is. He knows what it means. He knows the mentality he's going to have. It means a lot to him as a Laziale. I thought it was kind of so. Like, he did well in some things and not so well in other things. There are a couple of fairly hairy moments of playing inside our own half that in the first 20 minutes or so. But yeah, he is still an option there. And I feel like he's one of the players who's been a little bit forgotten about this season because so many new guys have come in. Ravella has impressed. Vecino is still proving to be a good option in that position too. And it's sometimes Cataldi's a less sexy option, let's say, as a midfield starter, because we're used to him. We know what he can do. He's not a very flashy player, but he does make a difference. We did get a question on this on Twitter and X, saying that I can't remember who it was from now. Alexander Pearson. Here we go. Talking about essentially that Cataldi's making a better impact off the bench than he is from the starting games. I think there have been a couple of moments this season where that has been true. What do you think of that, as Cataldi is more of an impact player in games?
Well, against Sassuolo, he came and hit the post, so he had a good chance. I thought, I don't know. I think we have so many solutions this year that we have to rotate a little bit more, probably. So definitely, I thought Cataldi didn't play that bad, honestly. I thought he had a good, decent game. I mean, apart from Guendouzi, I don't think anybody was excellent in this game. Otherwise, we would have won it, I thought. So, but it's still an option. I think giving playtime in the derby was very important for his moral. We need to keep him alive and keeping part of the squad because, we'll need him long term. And looking forward against Salernitana, I mean, this will be the first game where Luis Alberto doesn't play. But the problem is not only Luis Alberto. Are we going to have Vecino back in time? Is Maros going to recover? Is Zaccagni's going to recover? So we'll have to rotate eventually. And probably after the international break, we will force to. So it's good to give play time to this type of players who finished behind and didn't play that much in the last couple of games. And again, I think Cataldi was a starter last year. I think he still can start and give some value to this team.
Yeah, I think so too. And I think as well, perhaps this thing about the impact off the bench, it goes to show one of the benefits of having more competition for places is simply that once players get an opportunity, they're more hungry, where they should be at least, more hungry to take it and more fired up to get on the pitch and make an impact. Whereas in previous seasons, the midfield has been so locked in that it didn't really matter for Basic or Marcos Antonio, for example, last season, if they were getting a half an hour off the bench, because they would be completely certain that the next week they would be back on the bench again regardless. They weren't able to fight for a starting spot in the way that the players now can. So that's starting to be a positive. I think one of the more general questions we were asked was about the new signings. I guess now we're going into a second international break. It might be a good time to take stock on that a little bit as well, of who's impressing, who isn't. Isaacson, we saw off the bench again yesterday. I thought he made a good impact in that he is a guy who looks to actually make things happen. He tries things. He puts balls in the box. He makes forward passes. I was getting very frustrated with Felipe Anderson yesterday. I thought he had a really bad game. So it was nice to see Isaacson come on and do something proactive. But then again, there are some doubts, like you've mentioned before, about his defensive work. So what do you think about Isaacson and signings in general at this point?
Well, I thought Isaacson was the only one who dribbled past a Roma player yesterday. So that's impressive for us. That's what we're missing. Before the game, I was sure he would have played because we didn't have that many options there. And I was convinced that Pedro would never have finished the derby. He doesn't have 90 minutes. So Isaacson would have come in. I thought he had a good impact. we have the same problems. We talked about it. We don't put enough players in the box. So when the ball comes in, there's Chiro all alone with 4 or 5 Roma defenders. It was really complicated to expect something from him. I want Isaacsen to play more. And going forward, I hope. Now we have a couple of decent games. We have Salernitana. We should be facing all the smaller club now going forward. We only have to play Inter of the top 10. So I would hope to see more Isaacsen. Guendouzi looks like he's unlocked. He's playing really well, uh, definitely improving. Rovella have been playing well. Castellanos is probably the number 9 who played more in the Immobile era. So he definitely had some playtime. He needs to score more. I would love to see Kamada playing more. But we are not very lucky because Luis Alberto is going to miss Salernitana, but Kamada is going to come back only Saturday morning. So will he have time enough to start against Salernitana? I'm not sure about that. But I thought that slowly but steady, our new signing are improving, are getting more minutes. So this will definitely, this is definitely an encouraging signing looking forward. I mean, we are in November. The season is still long.
Yep. I would agree. I think that the more time has gone on, obviously, the better the performances have got individually from the signings. But look, I mean, my concern is more the general balance still hasn't been corrected. Obviously, at the start of the season, we were conceding far too many goals, and that was the main talking point. What's happened to the team that kept 21 clean sheets last season? And now the team has swung in the complete opposite direction, where we're keeping clean sheets again. And look, I'm not going to contradict myself and undervalue the importance of that, because I've said before, if you manage to do that, you're always giving yourself a chance. So it is very important. But the balance has to be better, because I'm going to bring out my notebook now, Vittorio.
Wow. We should create a jingle for that.
I looked this up earlier just out of complete curiosity to see where we rank in Serie A's statistics overall for attacking metrics. Okay, are you ready for this? It's not good. You're not going to like it.
Okay.
For goals, we're 10th in Serie A, but because we're joint 10th, there's actually only 6 teams in Serie A who have scored fewer goals than Lazio.
Wow.
13 goals this season. It's even worse once you get to assists and shots. Assists were 14th, only 9 assists all season. So, that tells you we're scoring penalties, we're scoring one-off individual goals rather than actually creating chances, as we know is a problem. 14th in Serie A for assists. Also 14th in Serie A for shots. We've had fewer shots than Cagliari.
Wow.
Ranieri's Cagliari and Frosinone this season. And then even things like corners, we're still in the bottom half of the table. Only 11th for corners. And we know that corners mean almost nothing to Lazio, but it does tell you about playing in the right areas of the pitch and so on. So it's pretty shocking. We're kind of lower middle table, or towards the foot of the table, for all these very basic attacking metrics. And that does say quite a lot. Although one of the surprising ones I came across was we're second for the amount of times we've hit the crossbar or the post, which surprised me.
Wow. Yep. Well, looking at the calendar, in the last 4 games, we scored 2 goals. One against Fiorentina, once against Feyenoord, right? So that tells you a lot. But the other side is, obviously, we conceded 1 goal in 4 games, right? And we play against Roma and Feyenoord and Fiorentina. So the defense is back, I would say, right?
Yeah, it is. It is. And look, this is a point I'm making. I mean, that is a great thing and a thing to be celebrated. But I do think we still need to improve, because the balance has to get better. We need to find a way of keeping that defensive solidity, but creating more, because those metrics are just not good enough. And even if you look against a team like Roma, who also rely on defensive solidity and are far more one-dimensional in the way they attack than Lazio are, they're still getting more shots, scoring more goals, creating more chances, despite having Mourinho ball as their strategy. So we have to that after this international break, that has to be the area that improves. Stating the obvious.
One stat that I found out very, very interesting and curious is that Ivan Provedel is the only goalkeeper with Pulisic who didn't concede a goal in the first three derbies he played.
Oh, nice. Yeah, I mean, I did see that by the next derby, even if Roma do score in that one, it'll be over 2 years since their last goal in a derby by the time the next one comes around.
Wow, that's incredible. Huh?
Obviously, 2-1-0 wins last season and then 0-0 yesterday. And look, Providel, I think, deserves a shout because we kind of got used to the guy. But I think recently he's come up pretty big. Late in that Feyenoord game, made a couple of very good saves.
Even the first half.
Yesterday against Roma, yeah. So I think Providel is still proving to be, goalkeeper of the year material.
Alistair, one of the things I was more concerned about the derby was Patrick on Lukaku. We said that Patrick struggled in physically against Lukaku. He's not a very good header, but we have to admit that he pretty much canceled Lukaku from the game. I was impressed. Don't know if it was the best game ever of Patrick, but encouraging performance, right?
Just love that guy. I mean, he's like half the size of Lukaku. It was crazy watching those one-on-one battles, and obviously it was a strategy of Roma's to try and isolate Lukaku to not be on Romagnoli and get him on to Patrick instead. But and he was being pushed around a bit, but I think he did pull his weight. I don't think that's the game we want Patrick to be playing, though. It's Patrick's more useful in the games where we're having the ball more, and he can be kind of hitting a few passes from defense and positioning himself better rather than getting in these one-on-one physical battles with guys much bigger than him. But look, clean sheet, you can't doubt it, and Caselli's got a fight on his hands to get back into that team at this point.
Yeah, I wouldn't change them. I mean, Romagnoli Patrick looks to be the best solution we have at the moment. And since the switch came, I think Lazio didn't pretty much concede any goals. Yeah, the one against Bologna, that was our mistake. But I thought our defense is playing better, right?
What do you think of defense celebrating blocks and tackles? Because Patrick this is something I think the Juve team the BBC team used to do a lot, and Patrick has now started doing this all the time, where he's kind of pumping his fists after making a block.
I would say it's very British. When I was in Leeds, a lot of games I watch, I see defenders and fans celebrating a tackle. In Italy, they usually don't do it. We celebrate only goals or back heels and things like that. So yeah, that was a little surprise.
Chiellini, Buffon, all those guys used to do it a lot.
The goalkeeper is different. A central defender, you don't expect that. But, it just shows the passion, how he plays. And I love it, to be honest with you. Patrick plays with a passion. I would love to see more players playing like that.
Yeah, and I don't think we should underestimate the influence that could have on his teammates as well, because that passivity we have complained about that I alluded to at the start. It's hard to have that, to play passively, to not have emotion and care about putting everything out there. If you've got someone like Patrick there who's pumping up the crowd, or which Alberto started doing a lot as well, which is good to see. Getting the crowd involved or celebrating blocks, or really showing how much he cares. And it's not to say that the players who aren't doing that don't care, but I think by just having like an explicit demonstration of it right there, I don't know, I feel like that's a good projection to have within limits. Like I don't agree with it if it's just kind of something really mundane that's happened. I think if you've done something really important and vital, then yeah, by all means. If there's an offside, don't go around celebrating.
Yeah. Looking the table a little bit, we are 10th, but we have just 3 points from Atalanta that is 5th. And we played against the top 9. We're only missing Inter. Do you think we have a chance? Sari said if we play with this mentality, with this type of football, we are going to get back up. But we don't score, Alistair. So are you convinced something is going to change against the small teams?
That's the thing. It's one of the questions we've had. Where do you realistically think we'll finish? I mean, it's hard to say. I think that we have benefited from, while Lazio have had a really slow start, so's everyone else, really. And even, okay, if you take away the guys right at the top, because we're not in a Scudetto battle, but if you think about Napoli's title defense, the way that's fallen apart, we're being given gifts. I mean, it's a 0-0 draw with a Roma team you feel we could be beating, but it's also happening on the same day that Empoli are beating Napoli and that Atalanta are only just drawing with Udinese, and just after Milan have, thrown away a 2-0 lead to draw with Lecce. I mean, there's a lot of teams with problems in this league this season. It's not just Lazio. So that's the most promising thing, probably.
I mean, you cannot expect that we are only the only team dropping points, right? I mean, it's going to happen to other teams. By the way, another astonishing performance by Cancellieri. I mean, did we just give away the best striker we had? I mean, he's not scoring, to be honest, but at least he's playing well. So
he's not a striker. So
with Empoli, he has playing every single position except number 9, right? He's playing even trequartista, but never number 9. So this is.
I think to bring it back to the top 4 discussion, I don't think it's gone yet, but I do think I feel like we always say this, but like you mentioned before, this next run of games is the real tester, because you do need to be beating all these teams we've got coming up. I mean, I can't remember exactly who it is, but Salernitana and Empoli and Cagliari and the teams the other half of the table.
Yeah, we have the next 4 games that we should win. Well, no, 4 games. I mentioned even the Coppa Italia. We have 3 games we need to win: Salernitana away, Cagliari at home, Verona away, and then we have Inter. I mean, we need to win these 3 games, right? Well, we should try to win even against Inter at home. Then there is Empoli away, Frosinone at home, and then there's Lecce. So we started again at home. So, we have these games that we definitely need to win. We definitely need to. Otherwise, I mean, it's over. The problem is, as usual, there's a Champions League in the middle. We have Salernitana, then you have Lazio Celtic, then you have Lazio Cagliari just a couple of days after. Then you have Genoa in Coppa Italia, then you have Verona, then you have Atletico Madrid, and the 4 days later there's Inter. So it's not going to be easy.
Yeah, but if you compare that run, I mean, I just quickly looked up Roma's fixtures, and in that same run, they've got Fiorentina, Bologna, Napoli, Juve in a row, and those are all teams who are within this group.
Obviously, because they played against nobody so far. I mean, they played Milan, Inter, and Lazio, and we are the 17th game of the season, the 12th game of the season. I mean, it's. I think not even a Roma fan would have made that fixture for Roma.
Yeah, Atalanta's got Napoli, they've got Milan. Well, I mean, I do think. There are a couple of Champions League games coming up that are massive, and that should be a big priority. But having that Celtic game at home is very important. And oh my God, what a relief it would be, I think, for this squad if they could somehow get a win there and a Atleti win to qualify from this group. or the game to spare would be unbelievable. And I don't want to get ahead of myself too much, but that would take the pressure off a wee bit going to Spain. And I think you at that stage, obviously, you'd still want to win the group because there's a huge difference in the Champions League between who you get in the next round if you finish first or second in your group. But it just takes the pressure off a little bit.
So, do you prefer that we beat Celtic and Atletico beat Feyenoord rather than we beat Celtic and Feyenoord and Atletico draw and you go to Madrid and fight for the first place? And you go in even if you got a draw in Madrid? Or you prefer, as you were mentioning, we win, they win, we're both qualified and you go to Madrid and play and you know that if you win, you are the first team, otherwise you're going to be the second?
Yeah, I think the second option. I think knowing you're qualified is a big deal. And I guess the point I'm trying to come to is that I do feel like when we're talking generally about the season and how things stand, it feels like going into this break now, we have come through the hardest part because the hardest part has been integrating all these new signings, trying to work out how we're going to play this season, getting through a very difficult fixture list at the start of the season, getting through our first 4 Champions League games and still being in the top 2, having had 2 of those games away from home where we're notoriously terrible in Europe. I mean, I think, you can look at the table and see Lazio in 10th. You can look at the terrible attacking statistics that I've just reeled off and get very depressed about things. But this season is not a write-off at all because I think we're through the hardest part. So there are still a lot of things to sort out that Lazio have to sort out if they're to finish in the top 4 this season. But I don't think we need to be too pessimistic.
One thing you mentioned about our incredible record in away game in Europe. You know which is the team that made more points in our group in away games?
Lazio.
Obviously.
With 1 win, yeah.
I mean, Atletico Madrid made 2 points. They drew away against Celtic. So, I mean.
Well, yeah.
And Feyenoord 0. Feyenoord lost both game away.
Yes. I think that we don't want to be going into that game in Madrid needing something, essentially. But, yeah, I think considering how difficult the start's been and, losing Milinkovic and all these things, it's not, we would have preferred to be in a better situation,
Obviously.
But I think it has gone under the radar a bit that there have been some really bad results, don't get me wrong, and that's why people have been shocked because you see a defeat to Bologna and Genoa and Lecce, and these games have not been good. So, but overall, it's still salvageable, and like I say, I think that a big bonus has been that a lot of the other teams are suffering from issues as well, whether that's with their coaches like Garcia Napoli or whether it's just bad form, not knowing how to play. So it's still all there, Vittorio.
Yeah, no, definitely. And let's not forget that we're going to play pretty much all the big games at home in the next part of the season. You at home, Milan at home, Napoli at home. So this could be a big advantage for us. But anyway, I was concerned a little bit for the derby. I thought that Lazio would have struggled. They did in the second half. But watching how Roma played, I thought we had a chance. We missed it. But at least we got 1 point. As Sarri said, you have to fight the derby. You have to fight for win. But if you're not able, then you don't have to lose it. And this is what Lazio did. We didn't lose the derby. So it's a point that doesn't do that much for the table, but definitely for the fans, it's better than losing. So overall, it has been a positive week. We won the game we had to win, and we didn't lose the derby, right?
Yeah, and after Bologna, that was a big moment for Sarri because the pressure was starting to ramp up on him a bit. Fans are starting to complain about him more. We had a discussion about that after that game. How much is Sarri to blame for what's happening, blah, blah, blah. So big pressure coming into this week, and I think 4 points out of 6 with 2 clean sheets is a solid return. So you got to give him credit for that.
Yep. Okay, guys, thanks again for joining us. Thanks to all our Patreon. Remember to listen and subscribe to our podcast wherever you listen, and we'll be back as soon as possible. Take care.
Cheers.